And we'll get into the details and agenda for today.
I've got the members up already on my screen, so can I do the roll call, Kalea?
Sure, great.
I'll start with obviously Kalea is here. Kelly Stokes.
Kelly Stokes.
Just remember to unmute yourself, everyone.
Her name is there.
I think I said Kelly.
Yeah, she said here.
Okay. Marion.
Marion is going to pop in and out. She will be present. She's just teaching a class, so she's got to go on break.
Rick Albers. Rob Cook. I've already seen Rob.
I'm here.
Candy.
Here I am.
Yep. Mary Lou. Scott.
Here I am.
Okay. We got Mary Lou. All right. Sarah. Ruben, we've heard from. Charles. Lori, I think I see, but Lori.
Here.
And obviously Commissioner Wilkinson is present, as am I, and I see Tony Slagle is present. Obviously Amber is here as well, and some other staff. But back to you, Kalea.
Okay. I'd like to welcome our guests. I see that we have some people here joining us, and so as well as several callers. So, Mark, how did you want to address our guests to make sure that we know who's on the call?
Yeah, the way it's set up with the callers in, we won't know if someone has not signed in. We won't know, so I don't know that we can know 100% sure who's on the call or not.
Okay. So if you, for those of us on the committee, if you look at the participants, you can see the names of those from our guests. So welcome to everybody. So I'll kick off the meeting this morning. Welcome so much for joining us via Zoom or via GoToMeeting, I guess. I've been saying Zoom so much. My name is Kalea Youngblood. I'm your chair, and I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and you and your loved ones are okay. Just a few housekeeping items this morning. As you know, we're all trying our best to do this virtually, and so please use your chat tool if you'd like to speak. Amber and staff and I are going to monitor that and try to do our best to call on you in the order that you're sort of virtually raising your hand. We're going to try to be as efficient as possible. We obviously have a large agenda, and so we want to make sure that we are going through this and taking breaks as needed and getting through the agenda items. So we're going to try to do this as efficiently as we can. Also, I know Marion isn't on right now, but she's probably going to chime in here. But I do want to give a big thank you to Marion and Rick Albers for stepping in my place at the Trek Commission meeting at their last meeting to report on our items. And so thank you so much to them. I really appreciate it. I was out of the country for work, and so they stepped in on our behalf. And let's see. I know we have a discussion on open meetings requirements. So Mark or Tony, did you want to speak to that? We'll just go ahead and jump on into discussion item number 3.
Yes, I can talk a little bit about open meetings. Obviously, I'm new to this committee in this role as Deputy General Counsel, and we had 2 new members, and part of our requirements on open meetings, which do apply to this committee, is to ensure that everyone's received open meetings training. The primary method that is done by the Attorney General on their website is actually through a video, which I watched last week. It's about an hour. It's a little bit dry. Another method that we've done in the past is send an email just kind of summarizing the requirements, and I'll send that email today or tomorrow so you have something in writing, and I'll give you all the details. I'll provide links to the Attorney General's site. And then the 2 new members, brand new members, are Rick Albers, although he'd previously been on the committee, and Candy Cook as well. Candy's already taken the training and sent me a certificate, and Rick is also going to take the training, although it'll be a refresher for him. The other 9 or 10 members, I think, were present when the January 2019 email went from the previous general counsel. I'm going to take that email, resend it to us. We're required as the commission to keep a record that you've taken the training. And one thing I wasn't sure if other than the email, if anyone had taken or watched the video, which is probably the best method to get the training, because then you can send me the certificate. Do y'all have any, or I'll pass it to the chair if she has any questions, or anyone has any questions for me on that. But like I said, I'll give you all an email on that later today or tomorrow with more detail.
Thank you. Candy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I took the hour of training, and Mark and I had talked about it a little bit before. I think it's really good for all of us. It was a great reminder of all the places that we have to make sure we're behaving. So I'm putting out kudos on it. It's an hour and 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
I've asked Mark to send that out to everybody, so I would charge us all to go ahead and take that. I know that most of us are very familiar with it. Like Candy said, it's a great reminder and training for us. So, yes, after this meeting, Mark, you still confirm that you'll send that out to everybody?
Absolutely.
Great. Anybody else have any comments? Lori, we'll get that to you. Okay. We have a discussion and possible action to amend the January 13, 2020 minutes. Candy, thank you so much for the fix for our date to reflect 4/20 today instead of the 17th. Were there any other edits to our minutes? All right.
I don't have an edit, but I have a question.
Okay.
On the minutes, there was a comment there from Director Buckholz on item number 4 that we postponed the discussion about travel policy for this meeting. And I didn't see it on the agenda. We're going to just continue to postpone it.
It was taken off on purpose. It wasn't really necessary. Something we decided could be handled more internally. So that's all it was. But we did check on that. So sorry for not clarifying that earlier.
Okay. And then the second thing, if I may, on the on number 13 of the minutes, there was a comment in there that had to do with the governor's. Let me go back to regarding the governor's letter. On the second page of that, it mentioned the word to determine what excessive was, and then it was also caution to the committee about the 21 and 18 hour. What was that about?
I can probably address that. The governor had sent a letter, I think, to all state agencies talking about lessening regulation. So that seems to be a push of the governor's. So I think that comment related to that. So increasing education in the current, or increasing some requirements for a license is considered by some to be a barrier to entry to the profession. So it's given a heavier scrutiny, I think, than it might have been in the past. So that was just something to make the committee aware of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just a note, just I'm looking at the chat tool. If you do speak, please address who you are so everybody knows who is speaking. That would be very helpful to everybody. Thanks, Ruben. Do we have any other questions or comments regarding the discussion and possible action to amend the January minutes? Mark, do you need a motion to approve this minute?
Yes, move to, someone would need to move to approve the minutes as amended.
Scott will make a motion.
Second.
Okay, Scott has made a motion. Who seconded?
Rick did.
Thank you, Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. What we can do moving forward, and Mark, let me know if this is not okay with you, but instead of capturing all the ayes, we'll capture any nays. And so that will help us move the motions forward, if that's all right with everybody.
Yes.
All right. Any public comment on non-agenda items? It was asked that our guests email in any public comments. Did we get any?
We did not receive any.
All right. Moving on. Staff report on education enforcement matters.
That would be Pam Mayo with the enforcement.
Hi, Pam. Are you there?
She's muted. There.
Sorry, I muted myself.
There you are.
You'll see, sorry. On this report, I broke it down into two different sections. The first section is agreed orders, and then the second section is advisory letters. And I did it this way kind of to show you that a lot of the cases do result in advisory letters. So I didn't know if you wanted to continue seeing those on the enforcement report. And since there are a lot of cases, maybe I didn't know if you had specific questions about any particular case rather than me going through them individually.
Is there anybody that was like, if you'd like to speak, please use your chat tool?
And great, thank you, Scott, for that feedback. Sure, if you have a couple of questions, go ahead.
Okay, this is Scott Hilton. Yeah, this is a great summary. I just had a couple questions on a couple of them, because I'm assuming that we as ESAC are getting these for a reason to maybe see patterns. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. On page 2, I've got a couple question marks here when I look these over. The very first one on that page 2 is showing, let's see, failing to properly administer an examination. Can you give me just a little bit of feedback on what happened there?
So this particular student, I think she was pretty sensitive to how many questions she got wrong on the exam because this was not her first time taking the course exam. And so she felt that, she'd answered exactly how the material was presented. And I think she had a problem with actually 2 or 3 questions, but when the provider went back, only one of the questions was graded incorrectly.
Okay, so we apparently think that it was a problem with their computer or administering the test correctly.
Right.
Okay, and then on the third one on that page, I think the one part that stood out to me was part 2 on the violation section of that. Section 535.67, and failing to cooperate with complaints investigation within 15 days. That sounds pretty serious when if the provider's not responding or not cooperating with an investigation.
Yes, and usually it is. In this case, they had a change in the operations manager, and so I did take that into consideration.
Okay, and the only other thing I just want some clarification on, just for my own understanding, is what dictates if someone's going to get an advisory letter or if it's going to move forward to where it ends up having an agreed order at some point?
I think some of the mitigating factors, like if you see the violations for offering a CE course after it's expired, is really the time in which it's offered. So if it's, let's say, within 30 days of the course expiration and they've filed an application and they're trying to mitigate it, then we wouldn't do an agreed order. But if you look at the agreed orders, some of them are offered, I don't put the details in, sorry, but most of them are offered months after it's expired, sometimes even years after it's expired. So those I do accept the violations for.
So obviously, if we're thinking maybe it just wasn't too big of a deal, but it's kind of a slap on the hand, we're just going to go with an advisory letter.
Exactly.
And it is just basically judgment on FREX when they start looking into it. And I think it's probably guided a lot by how the school responds, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do try to keep, I do want to keep some, I don't want to be too rigid, but I also don't want to be too subjective. So I think a general cutoff for me is, has the course been expired for less than 30 days, then I'm less likely to do formal discipline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. I think the pattern that I'm seeing is a lot of people teaching classes that are not approved. That's amazing to me.
And some of them are expired providers, and other people are, they submitted their application but didn't wait for the application to be approved and things like that. Maybe it's not fully understanding the mechanics of the process.
Yeah, I looked up some of them. I don't see any major schools on there. So it sounds like maybe just some fresh starting schools, or maybe, I'm not going to name industries, but just smaller, little small sections that are accidentally doing it, apparently.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or
And
comments?
I did add the column that we previously talked about the number of students and the type of delivery, so I hope that's helpful.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ruben.
Thank you. In reviewing the 3 pages.
Hey, Ruben, you're having some feedback.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in reviewing the 3 pages, I have a couple of questions. One of them is, what effect does this have on the 406 people that attended or took these classes, whether they were online or whatever it was? According to the 3 pages here, I totaled up 406 attendees. What happens to them? Do they have to wait for to get credit, or what's going on with that?
Yes, generally they are waiting to get credit. They're waiting for the provider to renew the course or to renew the approval so that education can assess credit. If they don't obtain approval for the course after the expired course is given, then education generally doesn't award credit.
So for
and
somebody
I think that only
who,
happened in one.
okay, but for somebody who had waited to the last minute to get their class in, to renew their license, and that doesn't happen, then what?
Hi.
Are they to blame for this?
No, this is Jen. I just wanted to address a little bit of that. One of the things that we do try to in education is make sure that we minimize any negative impact on the license holders who attended these courses. So we will award credit as soon as we're able to. Generally, we require, for example, if a course has expired and the provider has offered the course, as soon as we get the course application in, we go ahead and award the credit.
Okay. So now I have a question about the unqualified instructors. It seems to me, in looking at the dates that these were posted of when the things happened, that it all happened after the fact that TREC was now allowing the providers to approve the instructors, and TREC wasn't approving them. Am I correct in that, or am I wrong in that, in the dates?
Yes, so most of these, the facts occurred before September 1st. So when we actually did still issue separate instructor approvals. However, since my review of the case after September 1st, we were issuing advisory letters instead of formal discipline.
Okay, so how long does someone get to continue to do this? The instructor or the school, or go to, okay, that school wasn't approved, so I'm going to go to another one and tell them that I'm an approved instructor and teach their class as well, and they're not doing a good job of following up on whether or not they're actually qualified.
If I can
well,
address
I actually haven't. Oh, sure. Go ahead. Oh, well, I was just going to say I haven't seen a case like that since the new rules have after September 1st. Jen, if you want to go ahead.
Well, and yes, I would, I would just reinforce what Tim has stated. Those that exist on the disciplinary action report are ones that were prior to September 1 and the change. Right now, all instructors are required to be vetted by the education providers. And as we begin to implement the audit program, we'll be checking those qualifications and just making sure that providers are adequately vetting the instructors they employ.
This is Scott.
Hold on, Scott. I'm still talking here for a second, please. Thank you. So has it been considered at all whether or not to penalize the unqualified instructor as well as the school? I mean, aside from a letter? I mean, since the school gets a letter, but the instructor doesn't get anything.
Oh, they do. They're also on the letter.
Oh, okay. Okay, but only the school gets hit with the penalty monetarily.
Well, I haven't assessed any formal discipline with administrative penalties for the unapproved instructor violations because those violations have changed. But because a lot of times there was an approved instructor and generally their approval expired, and then they're teaching a course that's an expired approval. So none of these have just an outright unapproved instructor who's never been reviewed by TREC at all. But they do both are on the advisory letter, the provider and the instructor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
And don't forget, there's also going to be instructors that we're still going to be monitoring as far as legal ethics and broker responsibility that do have to have a formal approval from TREC still.
Okay.
Candy. Candy, are you muted?
Yeah. I fell off for a little bit, but 535.75-2 talks about the qualified instructor. Are we cracking down on the providers to make sure that they're qualifying their instructors? That's my question.
Hi, Candy. So that's part of what will be addressed through the audit program, is performing on-site and distance reviews of the programs and reviewing the qualifications of the instructors that the provider employs.
Okay.
All right, any other comments or questions with regards to this agenda item? Okay, let's move along to number 7. And I know that Tony wanted to speak and kick us off and give us some context around these items. Tony?
This is Tony Slagle. I'm happy to do that. Jen, I think, would probably also want to weigh in on a few things, but essentially, when this rule was proposed at the commission meeting, the inspector committee was not aware that this was moving forward, and since they also have the purview of inspector education is under that committee, and this rule addresses inspectors as well as real estate license holders. Inspector committee asked that they be carved out of the changes being made to the exam requirements for distance ed or for CE in general. So what these proposed amendments do is they maintain exactly what ESAC has pushed forward for the providers of real estate education, and it carves out and maintains the status quo for inspector providers of CE education. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't know if Jen wants to weigh in on anything else. I will say that because it maintains the status quo for inspectors and essentially does what ESAC recommended for real estate inspectors or real estate providers, that it can move forward for adoption at the May meeting. It doesn't need to be brought back for reproposal. So it could move, but anyway, this is before you guys, so you can see what the recommended changes are that address the inspector provider requirements.
Hey, Tony, and I'll just reiterate what you said. When this was brought before the inspector committee, they had concerns about the removal of the requirement for any type of assessment for these courses, and so that was the impetus for their change.
So just so I'm clear for what it is that we may do, it's not in our purview necessarily to approve or deny these changes, but merely this is information only?
Well, I mean, yeah, the inspector education is under the authority of the inspector committee. About 6 years ago, when we reorganized all the education rules, we put them in one place so they'd be easier to fix if there were overarching changes. Obviously, there are times such as this where the inspectors want to go a different route than the real estate providers want to do, so there's a divergence there. But for the most part, this was organized so that everything would be in one place. So that's why it's before you as well. You had recommended changes to this rule. The inspector committee wanted to carve it out, so it's before you guys again for informational purposes, just so you can see exactly what they're doing and see that it does not impact what ESAC had recommended previously.
Okay. So I would imagine with that said, we do not need a motion for these updates. Is that correct, or do you want us to go ahead and move to approve as written?
I'll let Mark weigh in on that.
It's probably better to have a motion on that.
All right, so for item number A, or letter A, we would seek a motion to approve the approval of the non-elective continuing education courses as written.
It's Scott motion.
So,
Motion.
Mark, I think you do them all together.
That's what
I'm going to do them all together. I wasn't sure since there was another supplement for C, or yeah, for C.
Oh. Okay.
Are these all together approximately the same sort of changes on A, B, C, and D?
We can take them all together, that's fine. I just didn't know if there was any discussion that needed to be had for each one.
Can Mark hear us, or?
I can. I don't know if there's discussion needed on each one. That's up to the committee.
I'm sorry, my question was, is it the same sort of changes that I've read on all of those bullets there?
Yeah, it's on that supplement. That's the carve out of inspectors, but I didn't know on the other items. If you're just talking about the supplement, yes, that was just the carve out of inspectors, correct?
Okay, so amend my motion to accept the changes as presented on A7, A, B, C, and D.
Okay, I'll entertain a second.
I'll second. Sarah Norman.
Any discussion?
This is Ruben.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Madam Chair, you said this is including agenda item 7D. This is the one that has the acronyms for the different, where am I here? Yeah. This talks about the changes that were being made for the accredited commercial managers and so on. Am I right?
I'm not following where you are, Ruben.
No, it's
okay, I'm on.
Section 535.73 is about the time course outline. Looks like the major change there.
Okay, well, what I have here, agenda item number 7D, is 535.92.
Oh, okay. Last one.
So that is D. I'm
That's
sorry.
part. Yeah, that's okay, and that's part of it. So I just have a question. Under the different acronyms for accreditations, if you will, or whatever we're calling them, number 7, CRE. It says counselor in real estate. NAR has one called CRE, and it's Certified Realtor Emeritus. I'm just trying to be careful that we're not doing two different, same acronyms for two different titles, if you will. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I would entertain, Jennifer, do you have any comments around CRE? I know that Trek would, does not take NAR into account with regards to this, so I would imagine they would just be identified as two different designations of the same acronym.
Right, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. And just to be clear, that list is not an all-inclusive list. It's an including but not limited to. We just wanted to update the language to the references and reorganize them.
And I appreciate that, and thank you, Madam Chair. But and I'm aware of, but our discussions have been about NAR. But if you look at some of these are the same that NAR had as well. I want to make sure that somebody wasn't getting the wrong impression. That's all.
Sure, duly noted. Thank you, Ruben. Candy, did you have something?
Ma'am.
Unmute, Candy.
Yeah, I am. It wouldn't unmute. Okay. A lot of these, reading through, CRE is the counselors of real estate through NAR. CRB is certified real estate broker. So if we're going to use, and some of these are trademarks. So if we're going to use them, we got to make sure that we put the correct name down on these. It's just looking at them, we've thrown them in there. I'll be glad to help out with them because, you know what I am. I'm the nerd in the bunch. But, and I can pull out all of the designations because CRE is a counselor of real estate, but I believe there's only 1,700 of them in the United States. So it's a real small group. Okay.
It sounds like we could maybe put that on a future agenda item to clean these up. Mark, I see that you'd like to speak.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify one point. We have a motion pending basically on the inspector carve out, and then we're also talking about sort of general issues on the other part. Maybe we could separate that and just talk about the inspector carve out, because there's also Kalea, there's also some comments on some of the other rules too, like commercial versus residential as well. So maybe just limit it right now to the inspector carve out part.
Okay, yeah, instead of doing the blanket approval.
Correct.
Okay, so but currently we have a motion on the table to approve A, B, C, and D as written. Scott, would you like to withdraw that motion and we can take them separately? You're muted.
Sure.
All right, so that motion has been withdrawn. So let's take the approval of action regarding agenda item number 7A. All those are, I would entertain a motion to approve agenda item 7A as written.
So are you asking for a new motion?
Yeah, we'll need a new motion per Mark's point to carve that out.
In reference to 7A, I make a motion to accept the changes to 535.72.
All those in favor?
I need a second on that.
Lori seconded.
I'll second.
Okay, any opposed? The motion carries.
Oh, just for the record, who was the second by?
Lori.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and just do B then. Do we approve 7B as written? Any questions?
This is Scott, make a motion to accept 7B, section 535.73 as presented.
Is second? Rod seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? right, motion passes. This is real special doing motions. I appreciate your patience. All right, let's move on to agenda item 7C, which also had a supplement. And Tony or Jennifer, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, am I still unmuted? This is the same thing. This is just carving out the inspectors from this rule, similar to the last one.
All right.
And I don't know if there's anything you need to add.
Did Scott make a motion for 7C to accept these changes for 535.75?
Okay, Candy seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving along. 7D, and this goes to what Ruben was speaking to, continuing education requirements. And so what I was hearing was that the designation needed to potentially be cleaned up. And so Jennifer, do you want to speak to how you might propose we do this?
Sure. I think for the first thing I want to just clarify and make sure that I didn't misunderstand Mr. Pena, but we do accept NAR and other related designations. So if this group thinks that we should reconsider what's in this list, because to be honest, this work was done quite a while ago, and I think just got postponed, due to circumstances. And so if you maybe wanted to assign a working group to look at certifications and make recommendations to, to update this list, we can do that. The only thing I'll say is that I want to be careful that we don't try to create an all-inclusive list and that we still leave room for staff to research and make a determination as to whether something could be acceptable.
Okay. Scott, did you have a comment?
I was literally just about to ask that same sort of question. I mean, why do we even have this list on here? It doesn't even really indicate that this is just a non-inclusive, not all-inclusive list. So why aren't we just leaving it to an internal trek memo that lists the courses? And if they need ESAC to help decide on that list at any point, that's fine. But why does it need to be the rule? If I can't remember that discussion, or if it was BS before Scott.
That's a good point, Scott. We've had a list of accreditations in the rules for years and years and years. And what this group did, and it was back, when Carrie was still GC and we were looking at that. So that means it's been well over a year since these recommendations were made. Something else that you might want to consider is putting together a group that establishes the basis for acceptable certification, minimum standards, and then let staff work based off of those recommendations. So that's another way to go.
Okay, and then the question on this, what exactly were we looking at as far as needing to approve or disapprove these changes? Are the changes that we made with just correcting these number 2 and 3 on that list with a few other minor changes and then the numbering? Is that what we were doing here?
That's right.
So just a question. I'm not real sure what we need to do here. I mean, we're either approving or disapproving this because it's on our list, but it almost sounds like we need to create a working group or make a decision as this group. Do we just want to delete all that out and then insert the proper language for a list that will be held or approved by the Texas Real Estate Commission? That way they can just do it internally. What do y'all think?
So I can make a suggestion here that we approve as written for the sake of making sure that the 3 hours of the real estate contracts is in there, and some of the other cleanup items, but then start a working group to go back and, like Jennifer said, create the minimum standards of individual elective credit requests for professional designation courses, that we can clean up that language moving forward. Lori and or Kelly, did you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Kalia. This is Lori Selecki. So I was looking at some of the remarks that were sent in based on 535.92, talking about the 3 hours to be in contracts. And some of them are coming from our commercial practitioners. And their question, of course, is, we don't have promulgated forms. A lot of times we are dealing with lawyers and lawyer forms. So where does that put us? What kind of box does that put us into? So I guess we might not have thought about that. So maybe we need to address that.
So I had a conversation with Mark with regards to that. And, for me, it was a quantity question of how many licensees represent the commercial, farm and ranch, et cetera, sector versus the residential. And, I certainly don't discount commercial or any other sector, property management, et cetera, with regards to contracts for those people who largely rely on attorneys for those types of contracts and work. And the feedback I received was that it is an extremely small percentage of licensees. And if you recall, the large amount of feedback we received when we did the survey saying that contracts was the big issue. And so that was interesting, just to give you some, to qualify the number of comments that we received with regards to the commercial sector versus the number of comments we received with regards to the actual contracts being such a pain point in the industry, kind of swayed my perspective as to how responsive we are to those comments. And so that was just kind of my 2 cents when I was trying to gather some of that feedback with regards to the comments. And so, Mark, if you wanted to speak to that at all for our conversation, we can entertain that. And I'm seeing the feed, so I'll be sure to call on each one of you as it comes in.
Yes, I'll let the group speak. I mean, I prefer, Chair, that the group speak to that first, because I see a few people wanted to comment on that as well, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay. So, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd like to comment on is I think that's a great catch in regards to the commercial. On the flip side, I feel like commercial's at such a different level in terms of, well, it can be in terms of expertise needed. And I would, being an attorney that works with people that bring contracts from a commercial standpoint to be reviewed, it's a big difference when you have an agent that's skilled and understands the negotiation process and how to negotiate points within the contract versus completely relying on the attorneys. So I'm hopeful that a commercial agent, although they may be a little discouraged that they have to go take 3 hours of contract, that they would understand that they're in such a high expertise that they would welcome that opportunity to hone their skills, because it really does make a big difference from the negotiation standpoint and in terms of how the deal is best represented by a real estate agent if they have that skill set and understanding kind of the main key points in negotiating a commercial contract. I could definitely come up with a 3-hour class that I could teach a commercial agent on how to best negotiate that.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Candy, are you there? I see you. I can't hear you, Candy. All right. Rick, Mr. Albers?
Yes. So just because a lot of the contract courses are residential based does not mean all of them are residential based. there are quite a few number of commercial contract classes that are put forth, and those are some very good classes. I don't see the problem with requiring 3 hours of contracts for all licensees. The residential ones should seek out the courses that specialize in residential contracts. The commercial ones should seek out courses that specialize in commercial contracts. Farm and ranch should seek out the ones that specialize in farm and ranch. That's simple.
Okay. And Candy had a concern about approving the 7D with incorrect information with regards to the designation. And so her feeling is no. So I guess I would seek a recommendation either from staff or somebody on the committee as to, I guess, disprove this, clean up this language, and then circle back to it. Or Jennifer and or Mark, do you want to chime in?
I think a working group sounds like a good idea. And keep in mind, procedurally, these rules are up for adoption, at least the 92. So if we recommend not approving the rule at all, then we wouldn't get the contracts change in. So one thing that could be done for this group is to accept it as written and then appoint a working group to sort of clean up those designations. The designations aren't legally wrong, they're just duplicative. And if you, as I frequently do in my job here, I'm Googling these designations all the time, and I get hundreds and hundreds of hits, and then I eventually find the correct one that this refers to. It happens in the IT world as well, where I'm always looking up these designations. So it's not wrong if we say that's the CRE, but I think I do agree with the comments of the group that that's something that should be looked at in more detail.
Okay, Scott, you have a motion, but before you do that, I'm kind of getting a consensus around going ahead and approving this and then creating a work group. And so while Scott speaks, which I believe he has a motion, please type your name in the chat tool if you are interested in being a part of the work group. Go ahead, Scott.
I make a motion on 7D to accept the changes as made in section 535.92. And side note, we're going to be doing a working group, but that doesn't have anything to do with my motion.
All right, Lori seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks, guys. That was a little sticky.
Oh, Claire?
Sure.
Just to make sure our minutes are clean, I think Amber is putting that each of those was unanimous. We didn't hear any objections on any of those.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure that if there are any objections, we want to make sure we noted it, but I didn't hear any on the actual votes.
Oh, I didn't either. Were there any? Was it unanimous for all of these? Were there any objections? All right. I think you're right, Mark and Amber. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 8. Discussion and possible action to recommend amendments to rules be proposed at the May 4th, 2020 commission meeting as follows. Mark, did you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, this one was real straightforward. It was just one of the staff noted a typo. It was D, it said D1G. G doesn't refer to notices. It's actually D1H. And that's all that's cleaning up just, and that happens when a rule gets changed and a cross-reference didn't get fixed. So that's all that is fixing a typo.
All right, did you need a motion?
Yeah, there would need to be a motion to recommend this to the commission for approval.
All right, Scott, you're up.
In reference to 8, make a motion to accept the minor changes to 22 tax section 535.65.
Lori seconded. Candy seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That was easy.
What, this is Amber. Was that Lori or Candy who you said seconded?
They both did. Lori was the first one.
Thank you.
Good job, Lori.
Lori and Scott, they're on it today. All right. Agenda item 9, discussion and possible action regarding working group recommended amendments to the course and instructor evaluation form. And is Charles on the call? I didn't hear him. Jennifer, did you want to speak to this?
Sure. I'm having some internet bandwidth issues, so I turned my camera off for a little bit. So this committee looked at revising the course and instructor evaluation form. The working group was assigned, and we actually separated out classroom and a separate distance education course evaluation form. I know that Scott was also on that working group, so he might have some comments, but this is the separate DE, distance education course evaluation form, that came out of that working group. So there were a couple of things that were just kind of fine-tuned in order to address specific the distance education delivery, including things like, 7, 8, 9, primarily 7, 8, and 9. The course provides opportunities for students to engage and interact. Tools such as quizzes and exercises were included in the course content. And then I believe it was item number 9, there was sufficient content and materials provided in the course that the committee worked on in particular to try to find, language that was appropriate. So, Scott, do you want to add anything to that?
I think the changes that we all came up with ended up pretty well. 7, 8, and 9 really helped to address people that are not very familiar with distance education to get them to understand it has come all the way to the same level of classroom. So we're now going to be getting feedback from the students that can assure track as they're reading on that is taking place in the distance courses like they should be being taken. I know I've gotten with you on number 3. Number 3 still just seems a little weird for me. So if we're going to leave it like that, which I'm fine with, I just think Trek should be aware that since each provider, I think the way you worded it, Jennifer, was we don't all have validation questions. There are different ways that different schools do it. So if you start getting a bunch that say my identity was not verified throughout the course, that might be a little subjective.
Any other comments on the evaluation form? Do we need a motion to approve this distance education course evaluation form, Mark?
I don't believe so. There's no change on it or action on it unless Jennifer has a different idea on that.
No, I agree with you, Mark. I think it was just a matter of bringing it back for the committee to see.
Great. Well, thanks to Scott and Charles and anybody else that worked on this. I think it was needed, and you guys did a good job. Thank you. All right, let's go to number 10. Discussion regarding text saving options for the Trek education forms. Do we have any update from staff on being able to save our fillable forms?
Sorry, not at this time. Primarily all of our ITS resources have been devoted to COVID-related issues and extending licenses, extending renewals, and
Can't either. Are you serious?
We else like to speak to education forum? All right. Scott, did you want to touch on number 11 for discussion regarding CE course topic?
Have you decided that you're going to go ahead and open up a working group for that?
Well, I think, doesn't it, if the 21 hours were approved, that's one thing, but if the 18 hours are approved with the contract, then it's a moot point, right?
No. So what we have right now, if we get it done as it appears to be, it's going to be 18 hours. We'll have 8 hours of legal 1 and legal 2, and then some people will have 6 hours broker responsibility. If they're under the broker responsibility requirement, they'll still have 4 hours of electives. So that would take 3 of those, which still leaves 1 hour of elective. So on the broker side, under the broker responsibility requirement, yeah, we're only talking about 1 hour. For everyone else, you're still looking at 8, 9, 10, 11, 7 hours of electives that they'll be taking. So we've discussed in the past, a lot of us, especially old-timer instructors, complain that there are too many fluff courses out there. One of the big arguments that I heard the commissioners talk about was, we don't want to go to 21, we want to keep it at 18, but why can't we get the education better? So that's what I would like this working group to focus on, is electives. Sometimes it's only going to mean 1 hour of elective, but in others it's still about 7 hours of what do we want our agents being taught other than the legal courses. So I think it's a discussion that should be held. I know that TREC has some guidelines that they have, but I thought it would be good for providers to have a list that's published or can be sent to them when they're saying, what courses can we write? And then my only question, if we do decide to move forward in the working group, would be, what does ESAC want? Because defining a fluff course is kind of, excuse me for saying this, kind of like defining porn. You know it when you see it. So we've got to decide what is fluff. Is, one could argue, for instance, feng shui. That's a fluff course. Another person could argue, yeah, but it's also about marketing for your seller to get them the better price for the house. I don't agree with that. I think it's a fluff course, but I think we need to determine what is fluff. Contracts, for instance. Teaching directly about the paragraphs in a contract, obviously that sounds like a good course. But how to better negotiate for your seller or your buyer, is that a fluff course? And I think that's the debate that needs to be held.
All right, thanks, Scott. I've got Candy.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I teach in different states, and I've seen Louisiana has required classes and what they consider to be the good classes. We have too many people with too many different interests. This is where it's up to the broker to define. It's in 535.2. What classes that their agents should be taking. I think that's outside of our purview on this. Jennifer said that we may be close to 6,000 courses approved. It's the broker who picks which classes are the important ones. I don't think it's us. We have plenty of information, and as Scott said, feng shui is maybe a fluff class, unless you're dealing with Asian clients who feel that that's very important. So that may be important to somebody else. I think we've got to be careful about putting too much information out there. I think that fluff should refer to anything that doesn't protect the consumer.
Thank you, Candy. Rick.
Yes, I agree with Scott that we need, actually I agree with Scott and I disagree with Candy about feng shui. But there are clearly other courses that are not related enough to real estate. And those courses shouldn't be approved. I mean, I think we still need to be approving the CLE topics. I also want to make the comment that when Scott was listing out the required hours, you made the made the mistake that I see so many people making, and that is, well, I've already gotten the number of required hours for my 2-year renewal. I can't take any more. And you can take 1,000 hours. And we need to make sure that all of those courses properly apply to the real estate and what the License Act says they should.
Thank you, Rick. I've got Rob, Jennifer, then Lori. So go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, there was a comment in our last meeting that someone thought that marketing was something that we shouldn't be working on as far as CE classes, right? You know, part of our canon's professional ethics is, of course, fiduciary integrity and competency. And my question would be, I can't remember who made that statement, but would you hire somebody who could not market your home or your commercial property, either one? And I would think the answer would be absolutely not. So I think marketing is a huge piece of what we do as a professional for our clients. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Rob. Jennifer.
Thanks, Kalea. A couple of things. I just want to provide some assurances that our education team is very skilled in reviewing courses for relevant and current accurate topics related to the practice and profession of real estate. Historically, yes, there were courses being approved that would not be approved today and really haven't been approved for the last several years. But to the notion of creating a list of specific topics that would be acceptable, there's an example, or one could take the example of the AQB, the Appraiser Qualifications Board. That's a federal oversight of the appraisal industry, and they list, I think there are about 20 topics that they list that are acceptable for appraiser continuing education. That could be one direction that this group might want to take. However, there is an element of potentially overreaching there and becoming, overly burdensome or overly bureaucratic in doing that. So I think that if it's something that the committee wanted to consider, again, I would recommend a working group and some really careful thought and consideration put into that. There are states that do that, and I think a few of you have already mentioned that some states have specific topics that are required for continuing education, and there really aren't any elective hours. But yeah, just to reiterate, I think that's a road that would require some careful consideration. And that's all.
Jennifer. Lori.
I think Kelly had a question for Jennifer. Is it okay if I pass to her?
Sure, Kelly.
Thanks, Lori. Real quick, Jennifer, I just am curious, how long has kind of the more strict guidelines been in place for Trex review of classes?
I would say 4 years.
Okay. Because if I were just to chime in, is that I think letting that process kind of play out, that some of what we maybe are talking about is classes that we've all seen and been subjected to years past, before the more stringent review of the class topics. And just want to also throw out there, you guys, that this is our first step towards even adding one mandatory with the contracts, is that if it's even worth us considering, let's play this out for a year, see how it goes, see how everybody kind of acclimates to having that be an extra mandatory, and then look at the idea of bringing in more and more mandatory. I mean, I'm all about education being solid and solid classes, but what can be hard is we have people practicing so many different arenas between farm and ranch and out on the coast or in the, city that allowing for the electives could allow them to maybe really make sure they're focusing in on what their specific needs would be. So I kind of jumped in, asked the question and commented. Sorry, Lori.
That's okay.
Lori, back to you.
Thank you. So my comment really is I think with CE, we have to remember what CE is. It is continuing education. It's to benefit your practice. And so because of that, as our practice changes, so must our courses. And so some courses that we may consider fluff, like we'll just use the example, feng shui, like Candy pointed out, if you are dealing with diversity, that's something that's really important to a consumer. And so I think that, we do need to make sure that our classes are helping in the practice, if you will. So marketing, yes, that's an important class. Being virtual in this environment, yes, that would be an important class. So there are going to be classes that are going to be subjective, whether they're fluff or not. But I think all classes should always be a benefit for the consumer, as Candy said, and be a help to the practitioner. So that's kind of, I think, the gold standard, if you will, that we should take for any class that we get out there. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this agenda item?
Yes.
Is that Ruben?
Scott.
No.
Scott. Oh, I'm sorry, Scott. I told you I got you. Scott, and then Candy, please.
So this proves my point in several ways, but I want to make a couple corrections to my fellow committee members. I did not say feng shui was a fluff course. I gave an argument for and against it of what people have made in the past. This proves my point, which is there's a lot of debate that needs to be held, but when you listen to the commissioners and you listen to what people complain about, like when I get in front of a legal update class of 50 instructors, and I asked them at this last go around this year, would y'all prefer that we raise the number of hours, or would you prefer that we make sure that the electives are more hardcore electives? And it was overwhelmingly hardcore electives. The other thing I'd have to say is Trek already is doing this. So why wouldn't we want to take a look at this list and add our 2 cents in? I mean, we are the Education Standards Advisory Committee. If we're not going to look at education topics and see if maybe there is room for improvement, maybe they're nailing it perfectly, then what are we here for? So that's why I would suggest a lot of debate needs to be held in the working group. I also agree with what Jennifer said, is we of course don't want to overreach and really knock out some topics. It needs to be well thought out.
Thank you, Scott. Candy.
And, okay, I'm here. All right, so the thing is that we're saying protect the consumer. Trek has really cracked down and put into 535.2 the requirements, and I actually went and pulled it back up, and it's the thing that says that the broker can require any kind of courses to assure competency. So I think we're coming at this from several different levels. I think that we have the minimum courses, but I think that we have to maybe figure out how we can promote that 15 or 18 or 21 or whatever number we pick. That's the mandatory, that's the minimum, but let's try to get them understanding, taking more and more and more. Tim talked about putting extra into SAE. I got to tell you, the GRI, I helped write on that, and Kalea has several classes approved for SAE. If we can get them into good SAE classes, then they get the information up front. And I'm gonna flat out say we have the good ones, and we have the bad ones. We have classes that people just buzz through. I think everything's getting raised up. I think that the current situation is allowing us a different way to provide education, and I think that we're seeing that people want to do it this way. So I'm looking to see what Mark has some stuff going on talking about it, but you know, the rule, we've already got the rule out there. We've already got the stuff going. How do we refocus it?
So I would, just to keep us moving along, I would entertain a consensus around if this body would like a work group with regard to CE course topics for elective CE. And so if this body is feeling like further discussion needs to be had or not, let's get a consensus around it so we can direct staff to get a working group together or not. So if we are in favor of a work group to this topic, please say aye and staff can count yes or no.
Aye.
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 Aye. Or
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
all right. Well, that was overwhelmingly yes. All right. Let's go ahead and establish a work group regarding CE course topics. Staff, do you need anything further? Mark or Jennifer?
No, you can, it's appropriate to appoint a working group now if you wish.
Okay, great. And then just to clean things up a little bit, we did establish a work group for the designation. And so I wanted to make sure that we captured those people who are open to serving for the designation work group. I know Candy was in. Anybody else? Or did you want to circle back, Amber or Mark?
I'm in.
I'm in too, if you need it.
Okay.
It might be helpful to have those who are interested send an email to you, Kalea, with maybe a CC to Mark. And so we have kind of a paper trail of who wants to serve on what committee. Because we want to make sure that we don't have so many people on each committee that we end up with a quorum of the ESAC.
Good call. So everybody has my email, kyoungblood@abor.com. If you'll shoot over a quick email to me, I'll tally everybody up and you'll be assigned, and staff will reach out to you for that. Thank you. All right, are we ready to move on? Mark, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, agenda item number 12 and probably 13. Jennifer, did you want to speak to the third-party proctoring for distance education? Are you muted?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so was it Lori Selecki that requested this information? Lori, was that you?
I think so.
Okay.
Sorry,
so
yeah.
all I did here was put together kind of a sample draft of something that we might receive when we, look at these things when our qualifying education providers are submitting their materials. I believe, oh no, that was time to course out. Okay, sorry, another topic. So I'm not sure exactly what the committee wanted to look at here, whether it was, was it just to provide a sample? Do you want to dig into what the minimum requirements are for third-party proctoring? So I guess maybe I'll ask that question of Lori or anyone else on the group. How can I help?
Thank you. So this is Lori. So what happened was I have been getting some complaints, I guess, or concerns with other brokers who their agents are taking third-party proctoring exams. And it's become super, super cumbersome for them to take the exam because it's like once they're in the middle of it, someone apparently pops in and makes them pick up their laptop and move it around the room and show the desk and make sure they're not doing anything crazy. And it was just kind of ridiculous. And so the question I had, because it says that you should be present and at the facility when they take it, or by an electronic means acceptable to track. And so I don't know if perhaps there can be some safeguards put in place that won't be so intrusive, especially when you're in the middle of taking an exam and then you're required to, pick up your actual hardware and show it and see what's going on. So that was just my question, and I told them I would bring that up and to see if I'll reach out to the group if anyone else is using a third-party proctoring and if they've had any other issues with that. So that was my thought.
So in response to that, so we have had some of our education providers that have contacted us saying that, students are less than pleased with the measures that are in place. However, we don't determine exactly what proctoring methods the education providers choose to employ. So in an effort to ensure the security of the identity of the student and that no cheating is involved, referencing textbooks, these are generally the principles by which most of our proctoring through technology has to take place in order to ensure those safeguards. So right now it's a matter of just upholding those standards for exam security, authenticity, integrity. I'm not aware of any other options. Face-to-face, in-person proctoring is always a possibility, an option, but there are inconveniences associated with that as well, which are obviously having to physically go to a location and sit in front of, another human being. So if we were to lighten up some of these standards, I think we would start to see some of the problems we were having prior to implementing these, which is, people taking tests for other people, and that was a problem. But I'm open to the discussion. I don't know what the other possibilities are that will still maintain the integrity of the final exam.
So one question I have too, if I could, I know that with the actual licensing exam, there is one group that is the proctor of choice. Is that something that could possibly happen with third-party proctoring on your other issues? Is there a company that could be the proctor of choice, so to speak? Or is that, is that not something that would be, considered, I guess?
Well, and that's a good question, Lori. And I think part of the problem that we run into is we're actually interfering then with the business operations of our education providers. We're now eliminating their option to choose or to develop their own method of proctoring through technology. So I think that is a challenge. The other thing is we would be, by doing something like that, we would be, I don't know how to say this, contributing to the financial success of a particular exam proctoring vendor. And I think that's dangerous territory for a state agency.
Yeah, kind of, you need arm's length and an opportunity, not constricting trade. I gotcha.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, that was really the only discussion I had. So.
Thank you. Lori, Scott had a question, or Scott's next, and then Candy.
If I remember right, when Lori brought this up, wasn't your concern was not so much are they being validated? Your concern was we've got students taking these courses, a problem occurs, they try to call for assistance. Sometimes they're not open late night, they're not open on the weekend, and that's causing the student frustration. And the discussion we're supposed to be holding is, what can we do to resolve that? Wasn't that kind of where you went that day? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was kind of that. And the other issue that we had was apparently the proctor is overseas. And so sometimes communication is not as good as the student can, the student can't understand what's being said. There was another issue too, where, as I said, they were just popping in the middle of the course, immediately just being really rude and telling them, take your, let me see your hands, let me see your desk, let me see this. It was just ridiculous. And the broker was actually in there with the student while they were taking the exam to see what was going on. So that was kind of, and it might just be one company, I don't know.
A question for Jennifer, and I'm assuming we're mainly talking about SAE and 30-hour PE courses, qualifying education. When providers submit these, are the providers required to disclose exactly what's going to take place before they purchase a course? For instance, this form of validation of identity, the hours of support, those kind of things. So they're required to disclose that prior to a student purchasing?
Yes, that's all part of the enrollment agreement. It should be included in the enrollment agreement. And we review those enrollment agreements as well. And then I'd also wanted to make the comment that that I think our education providers have a responsibility here as well to really research those proctors that they choose to employ for this purpose and take the feedback that they're getting from the students and make changes as they might be necessary.
So Lori, are you? We all know the importance of this topic, but is there anything we can do, especially based on what Jennifer has told us in the last few minutes? Or, I mean, what? I don't know how to word this without it sounding rough. What do you want us to do, or should we do anything, or did you just want to bring it up to see if there was any thoughts?
I guess I wanted to kind of bring it up and see if there were any thoughts. It doesn't really appear that we have any jurisdiction over that at all, as far as trying to monitor that or create a list of questions or whatever. And that might be something we could do. But again, that's going to be really up to each provider. I think it's going to start at the provider level, and I think students are just going to have to be more forthcoming with complaints.
Hey,
so I don't know that there's anything that the committee needs to do. What are your thoughts?
Hey, Jennifer, is this one of the situations where if this third-party validation company, they cause a problem, they're rude to a student, they're not there, or the student just can't get through it because of the third party doing something wrong, we obviously know that ultimately the school, the provider, is responsible. If a complaint were filed, maybe Mark needs to come in on this as well. I mean, could this be a slap on the hand for the school because someone else is screwing up, or what is there anything that y'all think that can be done to help make sure this is painless as possible for the student?
Mark, hold on. So I would, this is Jen, I would encourage feedback to the education providers, just again and again. I don't see how we would have any oversight over the third-party proctoring, organizations that our education providers employ. I want to stay away from, I have one education provider that has contacted me recently and indicated that they would like somebody on Trek education staff to field the complaints that their students are having over the third-party proctoring that they're experiencing, and that's a problem to me because the education provider should be the one who is fielding those complaints and then reacting and responding as as necessary to ease those. Now, if the students just don't want to have a third-party proctor, that's not something that that this committee is going to take on. I don't see. Again, getting back to the integrity and authenticity and everything that is involved in these examinations. Mark, do you have anything to add to that, or Pim, about our oversight or purview?
Yeah, it's limited. It gets pretty tenuous at some point, and it really would depend on the specific case. As a lawyer, I could always come up with a hypothetical where we could eventually have jurisdiction on it if it got really bad, but most things like that would be handled with soft pressure and discussion.
Candy, I saw that you had a question.
Oh, there I am. Somebody else asked it about allowing online proctoring temporarily for state and national exams. I'm getting hammered with this about our exams. We're now, what are we at, 5-6 weeks? And I'm not sure where anybody's going with this, but I'm being asked constantly. Do we have any update on when our national and state exams are going to be back available?
Candy, I can speak to that. I think, though, this is a separate topic from the course exam proctoring. But yeah, just as a side note, we have another meeting scheduled with Pearson VUE, who is our exam vendor, and that's scheduled to take place on Wednesday of this week. And so we'll have some more information at that point. Right now, all facilities are closed through April 30th, but our discussion is going to be about how the reopening will occur. Obviously, safety will be the most important thing on everybody's mind, but I know that they are prepared to do some soft reopening with safety measures in place. And once the all clear is actually given, when we're ready to reopen, full force, I know that our exam vendor has plans to employ large facilities in addition to the ones that they already own and operate to accommodate the mass numbers that need to be tested. So we'll have more information after Wednesday.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on. Jennifer, did you want to speak regarding the timed outline template for voices?
1 minute.
Oh, did I miss someone?
Yeah, this is Scott.
I'm sorry, Scott.
No problem. I think we're going to come up with topics like this that maybe there's really nothing we can do, but let me just throw this suggestion out there. When we have these things that come up that's obviously important and we just really don't have an answer, I know that TREC sends out important information to providers. Why don't we start doing a running tally of these types of things and just make sure it's sent out to providers as friendly reminders and a well-organized sentence or paragraph to remind them about important topics that are happening, that we're aware they're happening, to take notice and make sure that they're doing what they need to do on their end. That way, at least we're getting the information out and doing something.
Good suggestion. Noted.
So why don't, and moving forward, anytime in the meetings, if we come up with a topic like this, let's just, at that point, direct, send a message over to Jennifer, and I'm sure that that's not too much of a pain for them to send out an email here and there occasionally, or maybe once a month with all these kind of reminders.
Absolutely, Scott. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Good suggestion. All right, let's move on to time course outline, Jennifer?
Sure. So I put together something that's just kind of a very, very rough draft. And one of the things that I wanted to ask this committee was, I think that what you want to do is to create, is to have an option, something that an education provider can use as a draft or a template, but is not required to use. Is that the consensus of this group?
Can you repeat that, please?
So I think what I was trying to do, or what my understanding was, that this group wanted a draft of a template that could be used by an education provider to satisfy the times course outline requirement, but is not a promulgated form that is required to be used. And my hope is that that's the case, because I don't necessarily want to deter education providers who already have a really good timed course outline template that they use and already submit with their application. This is something that is just a draft, and I'm open to feedback on, and in fact, even since I completed this draft, has received some feedback from staff that could make some changes that might also be helpful. But I want to let you guys know that my thought is that this could be something that we could house on the TREC website, on our continuing education provider page, and offer to those education providers who may not already have a tool that they use that is acceptable to us. What I don't want to do is make an education provider recreate something that is already successful and acceptable.
I can speak to that, Jennifer, and I believe that is correct in the sense that it was just for consistency purposes and a suggestion to providers who are like, what do you mean by a timed outline, or get something kicked back to them. It's used as a reference and method for them to submit this information. That was my understanding, and I agree with you in the sense that it would live on the site, under the application process as a guide. And so I'll entertain any other comments, and if Scott, and then if anybody else, maybe Candy, wants to speak to this, but I believe you're on the right track.
Okay, Amber, okay, there we go. So, as I remember it, the main reason we even brought this up was when a classroom course is submitted on an application, in theory, we don't technically really always know exactly what's being taught. They only were doing a sentence. So that's kind of where we went with this course syllabus idea. And then in addition, when we were talking about evening out classroom and distance education with interactivity, we still don't know what the classroom courses are actually doing, the timing of when they're doing their interactive assignments, things like that. So that's kind of where we were going. I agree with we shouldn't make it a required format, but there are requirements that I think that we should say that you do have to explain X, Y, and Z. Because if I remember right, Jennifer had told me that if the sentence that they get doesn't explain enough, they will contact the provider to get additional details. So most of the regulators that I deal with have certain requirements, and where you might have a form to show them how to guide it, there are requirements of what would be in it. So I've sent this sample that I threw together to Amber, and it has basic things that a course syllabus would typically have. The course purpose, the learning experiences, if we scroll down a little bit. Let's see, course description, any requirements, policy, and course completion expectations, attendance behavior, just general things that are going to be in there. Grading and pass-fail criteria. Surely we should be letting a student know, even before they quite frankly take a course, is there going to be a test and do you have to pass it? Scroll down a little bit more. Then we start getting into the actual learning objectives, and this is what I find very important, and I'm surprised that we don't require it. Explaining what we're going to teach about. I mean, if I tell you that I'm going to teach 4 hours on a contract, that doesn't tell us anything. But if they start breaking it down, and as you see, this is just a sample, but it explains a certain topic that they're going to be teaching about and how long approximately they're going to be teaching about it. And then specifically to what we've been dealing with, and commissioners have talked about this interaction. We just assume there's going to be interaction in a classroom setting. Well, we can't assume anything. We need to make sure that interaction's happening. So like under this module 1, the second bullet, student-to-student interaction poll and questionnaire. That tells us what they're about to do and that they're actually doing it. We scroll on down maybe to lesson module 2. Let's see, required written assignment, case study. I mean, we do a lot more written assignments on the distance education, but if a classroom is giving us a detail of what they're actually going to do, we're going to know what's happening. And then when we go in to do that audit, when those start happening, we're going to be able to verify, are they actually doing the student-to-student interaction or student-to-instructor interaction? So that's my thoughts.
I love the idea of learning objectives, you know, and incorporating that into our format. I sometimes when we do get applications or outlines that include these very small breakdowns of minutes, that can be a little bit time consuming for staff. I'll just let you know that, and Scott, this is in no way a reflection on you, but there are education providers that do give us this very, very minute breakdown, 6 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 12 minutes here. Most often we find that when we get those, they're wrong. The addition is wrong. So I would not so much advocate for getting into quite that much detail. But overall, I really like the idea of having a requirement for some learning objectives, and you know, and of course, you know, the basic outline.
So Jennifer, just might I suggest, and we can get consensus on this from the body, that you take some of this feedback from Scott and some of the chat that's going on, and revise and tweak as you see fit and bring it back to us at the next meeting?
Absolutely, yes.
Is that okay with everybody? Thumbs up? Consensus?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Any update regarding agency's response to COVID-19, which we had already touched on Pearson View. I know that was a big question. Yeah,
sure, I'll take that.
Okay.
So you're probably already aware, obviously, we all made a really, took really great initiative early on, thanks to Chelsea's leadership and getting us remote as quickly as possible. So virtually all staff, you know, probably 97% of staff are currently working remote and have been for probably going on 5 weeks. Probably going on 5 weeks. Our license types have been extended, all of our license holders. So renewal applications and initial applications have all been extended so far through the end of May, and we'll await, you know, other guidance and make other decisions as necessary. That included our education provider and course applications. So any of those that were expiring in March and April were also pushed back to May to just give everybody a little breathing room and time to react and resubmit applications. Applicants have been granted exam authorization extensions. So that's one of the things that I didn't mention in talking about the Pearson View response, but all of our applicants so far, we have extended their application dates by an additional 60 days, so they're out through May. And Chelsea, I didn't realize, I don't know if you're still on the call, I didn't know if you were going to be on here, but is there anything you or Mark or Vanessa want to add?
I am still on the call. I've been on mute and off camera for most of this, but no, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has on our COVID-19 response. We have been almost exclusively remote since the governor's disaster declaration that was issued on Friday, March 13th, and by Monday, March 16th, we were at least 60% remote, and the following week we're more like 95% remote. We have come into the office periodic. Both Tony and I come in just to be supportive, and I come in occasionally because no one's here, and I have a 3-year-old at home. This is the most civilized piece of my life right now. But the only thing we really have occurring in the office right now, other than hosting some of these meetings, which is just a little bit easier to do from the office, is mail processing and the checks that we receive in the mail. On a typical month, we receive about $250,000 in checks that must be physically processed through the mail. That is significantly reduced right now, but we still must open that mail. We've gone from a 3-day check processing requirement, and we've extended that to 7 days so that we can let mail sit for several days before we open it to allow for germs to die. So we open mail once a week and process it after it's sat for several days. So we have a pretty extensive process in place to keep employees safe and extensive social distancing occurring, of course. But I'm really proud of the work the agency put forth really before my arrival to allow us to be nimble. We have our staff on laptops before this happened, so it made it much easier to address. So I'm happy to answer any questions. That's more than, specific to education, but wanted you to know where we're at.
Is everybody well up there?
Yes. As far as I know, we have had a few tangential exposures, a few more scares than actual exposures, but have had some family members of our employees who have been diagnosed, but that's been pretty minimal, really. And because we have all been, those individuals have been, staying home regardless. So it hasn't affected the remainder of the workforce other than just being worried about them.
Well, no disrespect to all of the other TREC employees there. Tony looks like he's about to pass out, so that's why I was asking. But my favorite TREC employee is Gwen Jackson. She's like 100 years old, so please take care of her.
Okay, we will do that. I am not going to comment on her age at all, but I can tell you that she was, of course, 100% work from home before all of this happened. She appeared for parties, and that's it.
That sounds about right.
I apologize if I look like I'm about to pass out. I am paying attention.
One other thing I'll mention is that, and this is just, an interesting tidbit. We had been planning to roll out the Teams platform. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's a part of Microsoft that allows for video conferencing and some chats and things like that. And so we sped that up. And we rolled it out in the week of March 16th, in the midst of all of this, which at the time felt a little bit crazy to roll out a new tool without such substantial training. But I'll tell you, it's been the best thing that we've ever done because of the motivation that all of our employees have had to figure it out, because that's the way that we internally have been engaged with each other. We've had all of our internal meetings have been through this Teams platform, which has worked really, really well. So
we use Teams at ABOR, and it's awesome.
It really is. It's been a godsend and a nice way for us to check in with our different divisions and see each other's faces. In fact, we even did a virtual goodbye party for Doug at the end of March using Teams because we couldn't hold his retirement party on March 31st. Just in the middle of all this. We will do that once all this is behind us. But anyway, that's the update.
Thank you. It's great to hear your voice, Chelsea. And I saw you come online, and I meant to address you. So Jennifer got to beat me to it.
Oh, well, it's good to see you all virtually.
And then Commissioner Wilkinson, are you still here? Did you have anything to say for us today? No, I see her on there, but I don't know if she heard me. Okay, so just one more thing, since I do see that Marion is on the call and Rick, I thank you guys at the top of the meeting for stepping in and helping out and speaking to the commission on behalf of our committee at their last meeting. And Rick was instrumental in helping us with some talking points based off the sentiment of our discussion with regards to the 18 hours versus the 21 hours in the contract conversation. So thank you, Marion, and thank you, Rick, for that. As just to wrap up our meeting today, the market's going to send out the Open Meetings Act training, so please take that and receive your certificate so that we can have that on record. And then I wanted to clarify with regards to our two work groups that those meetings are open and will be posted online. Is that correct, Amber?
They will be
So if anyone
posted.
wanted to
Yeah,
chime in,
they'll be posted online, but they're not open in the sense. Mark can
They're
speak
not
more
open.
about it.
They're not required to be open, but we typically do have them open. So if we're doing it remotely, which is likely now, we will allow that option for people to attend if they wish. And that's kind of how we did some other working groups for another committee.
okay. That's just for that clarification. And then please send me an email. I received just a few come through for those of you that do want to serve on those two work groups. One being for the designation cleanup, as well as the e-course topic. So send that over to me and I will get your name on the list. And that's what I had. As far as agenda items and dates for our next meeting, the two items that I seem to have drummed up here are the timed outline update from Jennifer based off of our just most recent conversation, and then an update from both of those work groups. Does anybody have any agenda items they'd like to add to the agenda for our next meeting? Let me check the chat tool, sorry.
I threw out some possible meeting dates as well if you're up to that yet, Kalia.
Just to be.
Yes, please.
If you want to have it as a Monday, as it typically is, there's kind of a window where the group can meet in sufficient time before the August 10th commission meeting. So some possibilities would be June 29th, July 6th, July 13th. Obviously, you have the whole week, but if it's a Monday, those are possible dates.
You said June 29th, July 13th, or July 13th?
July 6th and 13th, and I hope I got the days right. Let me check. Those are Mondays. I think they are.
Yeah, I see that.
June 29th looks great.
Is everybody okay with June 29th?
I don't know yet.
Any objections to that? Kelly says July 13th keeps with our pattern.
So are we talking about for the next meeting or are we talking about for the group?
Yes, for our next meeting.
Okay, yeah, I had the 13th as well, but whichever date you guys decide on, I'm good.
Can we do the 13th, please, please, please?
Yeah.
All right, 13th it is.
Okay.
And did you want 9 or 10 o'clock? So usually y'all do 10, but obviously it's up to you what time. Just wanted to make sure we get that specified.
Let's do 10 a.m. to keep it consistent. All right. All right, well, is there any other business that anybody would like to discuss? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate
Stay
you.
safe out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.